Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling utterly drained because you spent the whole time justifying your choices, your beliefs, or your boundaries? We often believe that if we just explain ourselves well enough, others will finally understand and validate us. But the truth is, over-explaining doesn't build respect. It bleeds your power. Today, we uncover the Stoic secret to true self-control and inner peace. It is time to drop the defense, stop explaining yourself, and reclaim your life. Imagine for a moment that you are the defendant in a courtroom. The jury is seated, the judge is glaring down from the bench, and the prosecutor is relentlessly pointing out your flaws, your strange decisions, and your unconventional path in life. You are sweating. You are pulling out documents, citing precedents, speaking as fast as you can to make them understand. You just want a verdict of not guilty. You want them to nod and say, "Ah, now we see why you did that. You are justified. You are approved." Now, realize the tragic truth of this scenario. This courtroom does not exist in reality. It exists entirely in your own mind, and you are the one who keeps willingly walking in, taking the stand, and begging for a favorable verdict from people who have no actual jurisdiction over your life. This is the trap of the endless defense. In our modern world, we have been conditioned to believe that we owe everyone an explanation. We feel compelled to justify our career changes, our dietary choices, our relationship statuses, our financial decisions, and even our need for a quiet evening alone. If someone questions us, our default instinct is to open our mouths and pour out reasons. We treat our words like currency, constantly paying tolls to others just to be allowed to travel on our own path. But the ancient Stoics understood a profound psychological truth. The moment you begin to over-explain yourself, you are subtly handing over your power. You are telling the other person, "My choice is not valid until you understand it and agree with it." Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, sat at the absolute pinnacle of human power in the ancient world. He could have demanded that everyone understand his decrees. He could have spent his days explaining his philosophical musings to the Senate to win their favor. Yet, in his private journal, Meditations, he wrote something that strikes at the very heart of this human frailty. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Why do we do this? Why do we expend so much mental and emotional energy trying to construct the perfect explanation for people who, most of the time, have already made up their minds? The root cause is a deep-seated desire for external validation and an intense fear of being misunderstood. We are social creatures, wired by evolution to fear the judgment of the tribe. In ancient times, being misunderstood or disapproved of could mean exile, which meant death. Today, exile looks different. It looks like a strange look from a co-worker, a passive-aggressive comment from a family member, or a lack of likes on a social media post. But our brains react with the same panic. So, we talk, we explain, we justify, we over-apologize. Consider a man who decides to quit a lucrative but soul-crushing corporate job to pursue a quiet life as a carpenter. When he tells his peers, they are baffled. But what about your pension? What about your status? Why would you throw away a decade of climbing the ladder? They ask. If this man lacks Stoic grounding, he will feel the intense heat of their judgment. He will immediately begin to defend himself. He will list statistics about stress and heart disease. He will try to make them see the beauty of working with wood. He will talk until his voice is hoarse, hoping to see the light of understanding in their eyes. But as he speaks, he notices something terrifying. They aren't listening to understand. They are listening to respond. They are listening to dismantle his arguments because his bold choice challenges their safe, conventional choices. Every word he gives them is just ammunition for them to fire back. He leaves the interaction feeling exhausted, full of self-doubt, and stripped of the quiet joy his decision initially gave him. Now, imagine the same man armed with Stoic wisdom. When they ask him why he is throwing his life away, he smiles. He simply says, "Because it is the right path for me." And then he stops talking. He embraces the silence. He allows the awkwardness to hang in the air. He does not feed their skepticism with his nervous energy. By refusing to mount a defense, he denies them the role of the judge. This is where the Stoic secret to respect begins to reveal itself. Respect is not won through frantic persuasion. Respect is commanded through quiet conviction. When you stop explaining yourself, you signal to the world, and more importantly, to your own subconscious, that your inner compass is calibrated, that your choices are deliberate, and that you do not require a permission slip from the gallery to live your own life. The Stoics taught that the highest good is virtue, living in accordance with nature and reason. Virtue does not require a PR campaign. If you act with justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance, the actions themselves are the only explanation needed. If you choose to skip a crowded party to stay home and read because it serves your mental peace, that is a temperate and wise choice. You do not need to invent an elaborate excuse about feeling under the weather. "I won't be able to make it" is a complete sentence. When we over-explain, we often drift into the territory of lying, or at least bending the truth. We invent phantom obligations. We exaggerate our fatigue. We create elaborate stories to make our boundaries seem more palatable to others. But Stoicism demands a commitment to truth. Explaining yourself endlessly is often a form of cowardice, an unwillingness to stand firm in the naked truth of your own will. Seneca, another giant of Stoic philosophy, observed how people squander their time and energy on things that do not matter. He noted that we guard our physical property with locked doors and high walls, yet we leave the gates to our minds wide open, allowing anyone who walks by to demand our attention and drag us into pointless debates about our own lives. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you, visualize that you are taking a heavy bag of gold coins, your precious time, your mental peace, your self-respect, and handing it over to a stranger for absolutely nothing in return. The trap of the endless defense is a labyrinth with no exit. There will always be someone who disagrees with you. There will always be a family member who thinks you are too distant or too involved, a friend who thinks you are too ambitious or too lazy, a society that tells you that you are too much of this and not enough of that. If your strategy is to explain yourself until everyone is satisfied, you will spend your entire life on the witness stand, and you will die before you ever get around to actually living. To step out of the trap, you must cultivate the courage to be disliked. You must cultivate the profound emotional resilience to allow others to hold incorrect opinions about you. Let them think you are strange. Let them think you are making a mistake. Let them whisper. Your life is not a group project. It is a solitary masterpiece, carved out of the raw marble of your own character. And a sculptor does not stop after every strike of the chisel to explain to the onlookers why he is chipping away a particular piece of stone. He keeps his eyes on the vision in his mind, and he lets the finished work speak for itself. If part 1 is about recognizing the exhausting trap of endless defense, part 2 is about forging the weapon and the shield that will protect you from it. That shield is silence, and the weapon is the radical acceptance of the dichotomy of control, the very foundation of Stoic philosophy. To understand the immense power of not explaining yourself, we must turn to Epictetus. Unlike Marcus Aurelius, who was born into nobility, Epictetus was born a slave. He endured unspeakable hardships, physical abuse, and systemic oppression. According to historical accounts, his master once violently twisted his leg out of sheer cruelty. Epictetus, demonstrating superhuman Stoic calm, calmly warned his master, "If you keep twisting, it will break." The master kept twisting, and the leg snapped. Epictetus, his face unreadable, simply said, "I told you it would break." He walked with a crutch for the rest of his life. Why is this story relevant to over-explaining? Because Epictetus understood that words, complaints, and defensive explanations are entirely useless when directed at those who are unwilling or unable to listen to reason. He knew that his master's cruelty was out of his control. Complaining, justifying his worth, or begging for mercy would not have changed the master's character. It would have only degraded Epictetus's own dignity. Later in life, as a freedman and a revered philosopher, Epictetus laid down the golden rule of Stoicism. Some things are in our control, and others not. In our control are our own opinions, our aspirations, our desires, and the things that repel us. These constitute our prohairesis, our moral character and will. Outside our control are our bodies, our property, our reputation, and the opinions of others. When you strip away the social conditioning and look at the act of explaining yourself through the lens of Epictetus, it becomes glaringly obvious why it is a source of anxiety. When you explain yourself, you are trying to manipulate something that is fundamentally outside of your control, the internal thoughts and perceptions of another human being. You can deliver the most logically sound, eloquent, and emotionally compelling explanation in the history of the world, but you cannot force the listener to accept it. They might be in a bad mood. They might have deep-seated insecurities that your choice triggers. They might simply be stubborn. By attaching your peace of mind to their understanding, you are chaining your emotional well-being to a wild horse. Wherever the horse runs, you will be dragged. Epictetus taught that we must wear the opinions of others like a loose garment. If someone criticizes your path, the Stoic response is not a frantic defense, but a calm realization that their opinion belongs to them, not to you. Consider the historical figure of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator known for his flawless integrity and unyielding Stoic principles. He was the ultimate political rival to Julius Caesar. Cato was known for doing exactly what he believed was right, regardless of public opinion or political danger. Once, while walking through the forum, a political opponent, enraged by Cato's refusal to compromise, walked up to him and spat directly in his face. The crowd gasped. They waited for Cato to explode, to draw a weapon, or at the very least to launch into a fiery speech defending his honor and condemning the man. What did Cato do? He calmly wiped his face, looked at the man, and said nothing. He simply walked away. By offering no defense, no explanation, and no emotional reaction, Cato rendered his attacker entirely powerless. The attacker wanted a reaction. He wanted Cato to engage in a struggle, to lower himself into a muddy debate where they would be equals. Cato's silence, his refusal to justify himself or his composure, was an impenetrable armor. It communicated something words never could. You are so far beneath my moral standard that your insult does not even register on my soul. Silence is deeply unnerving to a society obsessed with noise. When someone challenges you, why are you leaving the party so early? Why haven't you bought a house yet? Why do you spend so much time on that silly hobby? They expect the tennis match of conversation to continue. They serve the ball, and they expect you to swing back with a justification. When you simply drop the racket and let the ball bounce past you, it disrupts their entire reality. Imagine responding to a probing, judgmental question with a simple, "Because I prefer it this way," followed by absolute silence. Hold eye contact. Breathe. Do not rush to fill the void. The person asking will often be uncomfortable. They will realize they have overstepped. The burden of the awkwardness shifts from you to them. You have built a fortress around your boundaries, not with bricks, but with empty space. This is the power of the silent no. It is the understanding that your choices are self-evident to you, and that is all that matters. You do not need to issue a press release for every boundary you set. Now, this does not mean we become mute, uncooperative, or arrogant. Stoicism is not about being antisocial. It is about being intentional. There is a vast difference between necessary communication and defensive over-explaining. If you are working on a team and you change a project plan, you must communicate the what and the how so the team can function. You might even explain the why if it serves a strategic purpose. But the moment the explanation crosses over from providing necessary information to pleading for emotional validation, you have lost the Stoic path. You can identify this shift in your own body. Necessary communication feels grounded, clear, and objective. Defensive over-explaining feels frantic, tight in the chest, and emotionally volatile. Your voice might get higher, you might repeat yourself, you might start bringing up irrelevant past events to bolster your case. When you feel this physical shift, it is a warning siren from your Stoic mind. It is time to pull back. It is time to stop talking. Seneca wrote, "Let us train our minds to desire what the situation demands. If the situation demands that you make a hard choice that others will misunderstand, train your mind to desire the misunderstanding. Welcome it. See it as a gymnasium where you can practice your Stoic endurance. Every time you successfully resist the urge to explain yourself to a critic, you are doing a mental push-up. You are strengthening your prohoresis. You are building a thicker skin and a quieter mind. Think of your energy as a glass of clean water. Every time you over-explain yourself, you pour a little bit of that water onto dry sand. The sand absorbs it instantly, and nothing grows. The water is gone, and you are left thirsty. Stop watering the desert of other people's opinions. Save that water. Drink it yourself. Use that energy to actually build the life you are so desperately trying to justify. Because at the end of your life, when you are lying on your deathbed, looking back at the tapestry of your years, you will not care whether the neighbors understood your career choice. You will not care whether your distant relatives agreed with your lifestyle. You will only care about one thing. Did I live true to myself? Did I live with virtue? Did I govern my own mind? Or did I let the crowd govern it for me? To live a Stoic life is to become the absolute monarch of your own soul. A king does not run out to the town square every morning to beg the peasants for permission to wear his crown. He wears it because it is his. Your choices, your boundaries, your life, these are your crown. Stop apologizing for it. Stop pointing to the jewels and explaining how much they cost. Put the crown on your head, straighten your spine, and let your actions speak the only language that truly matters. The language of a life well lived. In the previous parts, we explored the psychological trap of over-explaining and the impenetrable armor of Stoic silence. Now, we must turn our attention to the actual, tangible cost of this habit. Because, make no mistake, explaining yourself is not a harmless quirk. It is a slow, dripping leak in the reservoir of your life's energy. It is a profound theft of your most non-renewable resource, your time. Seneca the Younger, in his brilliant essay on the shortness of life, wrote words that should be carved into the walls of every modern home. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were all well invested. But when it is wasted in heedless luxury and spent on no good activity, we are forced at last, by death's final constraint, to realize that it has passed away before we knew it was passing. When Seneca speaks of wasting time, we often picture someone lounging around, engaging in vice, or staring aimlessly at the wall. But one of the most insidious ways we waste our lives is by standing in the imaginary courtroom, pleading our case to people whose opinions should carry no weight in our souls. Imagine an architect who has been commissioned to build a magnificent cathedral. He has the blueprints, the vision, and the backing to create something that will stand for 1,000 years. He lays the foundation and begins to build. But every day, townspeople walk by the construction site. A baker stops and says, "Why are you making the arches so high? It seems unnecessary." A blacksmith walks by and adds, "The stone on the east side looks entirely the wrong color." A local merchant yells, "You should be building a marketplace, not a cathedral." If the architect operates the way most of us do in our daily lives, he will put down his tools, walk to the edge of the construction site, and begin to explain. He will unroll his blueprints for the baker to teach him about load-bearing masonry. He will argue with the blacksmith about the structural integrity of the stone. He will desperately try to convince the merchant that spiritual beauty is as important as commerce. He might win the arguments. He might even convince a few of them. But what happens to the cathedral? The mortar dries up. The workers stand idle. The daylight fades. The cathedral remains unbuilt, not because the architect lacked skill, but because he gave his building time to the critics. Every time you stop to over-explain your life choices to a skeptic, a cynic, or an overly meddlesome relative, you are the architect putting down your tools. You are pausing the construction of your own character and your own destiny to appease a passerby who will likely forget the conversation by tomorrow. The Stoics understood that to achieve greatness, or simply to achieve ataraxia, the tranquil state of mind free from disturbance, you must be willing to let people be wrong about you. You must be willing to let the baker think the arches are too high. The cost of explaining goes beyond just the minutes spent talking. The true cost is paid in the currency of your mental bandwidth. When you engage in defensive justification, you do not leave the conflict at the door. You carry the energy of that interaction into your inner citadel. Have you ever noticed what happens after you spend an hour trying to justify a personal boundary to a toxic friend or a demanding boss? You don't walk away feeling relieved. You walk away agitated. You get into your car and you replay the conversation. You think of the perfect comeback you should have said. You argue with their ghost in the shower. You lie awake at 2 a.m., your heart rate elevated, having a phantom debate with someone who is currently fast asleep. By trying to control their opinion of you, you have allowed them to completely conquer your own mind. You have handed them the keys to your emotional state. Epictetus warned us about this specific vulnerability. If a person gave your body to any stranger he met on his way, you would certainly be angry. And do you feel no shame in handing over your own mind to be confused and mystified by anyone who happens to verbally attack you? When we over-explain, we are literally handing our minds over to the masses. And who are these masses we are so desperate to appease? Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to look closely at the people whose approval he was seeking. He noted that they are often people who cannot even sleep peacefully, who are driven by chaotic desires, who are deeply unhappy in their own lives. Why, he asked himself, would he ever compromise his own virtue to seek the validation of people who are lost in the dark? To reclaim your time and your energy, you must practice the discipline of letting go. When someone questions a choice you have made, whether it's the way you raise your children, the way you spend your money, or the way you spend your weekends, recognize the moment for what it is, a test of your stoic resolve. Feel the urge to explain rising in your chest. Feel the heat of the ego wanting to defend its honor. And then, take a breath. Look at the blueprint of your life. Ask yourself, does explaining this build the cathedral, or does it stop the work? If it stops the work, simply smile. Offer a polite, non-committal response. I appreciate your perspective, but this is the route I'm taking. And then, pick up your tools and go back to building. The ultimate defense against criticism is not a well-crafted argument. It is a well-lived life. Let the finished cathedral be your only explanation. We have discussed the philosophy, the mindset, and the hidden costs of the endless defense. But philosophy without application is just intellectual entertainment. The true test of Stoicism happens not in the quiet of a library, but in the chaotic, messy reality of our daily lives. How do we take these ancient principles and apply them to the holiday dinner table, the corporate boardroom, or the complicated dynamics of our closest relationships? How do we set boundaries without falling back into the habit of apologizing and explaining? The key lies in understanding the difference between a negotiation and a boundary. A negotiation is a collaborative process where both parties have a say in the outcome. When you negotiate, you offer reasons, you make compromises, and you explain your position to reach a mutual agreement. A boundary, however, is a statement of fact about your own behavior. It is a line drawn in the sand of your own life. It requires no mutual agreement, no compromise, and crucially, no explanation. The mistake we make is that we treat our boundaries like negotiations. Imagine you are invited to a social event that you know will drain you. You have had a grueling week, and you know that in order to maintain your health and sanity, you need to stay home and rest. The host texts you, "Are you coming on Saturday? Everyone is going to be there." The non-stoic mind panics. It feels the pressure of social obligation. It immediately starts drafting a negotiation. "I'm so sorry, but I don't think I can make it. My boss gave me all this extra work, and I think I might be coming down with a cold, and my car has been making a weird noise, and I just really need to catch up on sleep. I feel terrible missing it. Please forgive me." Look at the weakness in that message. It is practically begging the host for a permission slip to rest. It opens up multiple avenues for the host to argue back. "Oh, come on, just come for an hour. I can come pick you up if your car is acting up. You can sleep in on Sunday." Because you offered excuses, the host treats them as obstacles to be solved, rather than a boundary to be respected. Now look at the Stoic approach. The Stoic reads the text, acknowledges the reality of their own fatigue, and drafts a boundary. Thank you so much for the invite, but I won't be able to make it this time. Hope you all have a wonderful night. Send. Period. Notice what is missing? There is no apology for existing. There is no elaborate tale of woe. There is no justification. It is polite, it is firm, and it leaves absolutely no room for negotiation. If the host replies and asks, "Why not? What are you doing?" the Stoic holds the line. "I have other commitments tonight." Even if that commitment is staring at the ceiling and recovering in silence, setting boundaries without explanation requires a profound shift in how we view our obligation to others. Stoicism teaches the concept of sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things. We are made for cooperation, Marcus Aurelius wrote, like feet, like hands, like eyelids. We have a duty to be kind, to be just, and to help our fellow human beings. But sympatheia does not mean setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. It does not mean abandoning your own post, your own mental and physical well-being to please the crowd. You cannot serve the whole if you are fractured and broken. To set boundaries effectively, you must embrace the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Marcus Aurelius famously began his days by reminding himself, "Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness." When you decide to stop explaining yourself and start enforcing your boundaries, you must expect resistance. People who are used to walking all over you will be shocked when you suddenly erect a wall. They will accuse you of being cold, selfish, or arrogant. They will try to guilt-trip you. They will demand to know why you have changed. If you do not anticipate this pushback, you will crumble at the first sign of conflict and revert to your old over-explaining ways. But if you prepare for it, you can stand firm. Picture yourself at a family gathering. An intrusive relative corners you and demands to know why you haven't bought a house yet, or why you are still single, or why you changed your career to something they deem less prestigious. Explain yourself, their tone implies. Instead of getting defensive, instead of listing the current interest rates or your personal philosophies on love, you employ the Stoic pause. You let a second of silence pass. You maintain relaxed, confident eye contact, and you respond with absolute neutrality. "I am very happy with the path I am on right now. How is your garden coming along this year?" If they press the issue, you simply repeat the boundary. "I'm not going to discuss my finances' harsher relationship tonight. Let's talk about something else." This level of self-control is incredibly powerful. It demonstrates that you are not a leaf blowing in the wind of their interrogation. You are a mountain. You cannot be moved by their probing. You do not react with anger, for anger is a loss of control. You do not react with submission, for submission is a loss of dignity. You react with calm, unshakable sovereignty. Sometimes, the hardest place to stop explaining ourselves is not with our detractors, but with our loved ones. We fear that if we don't explain every facet of our inner world, they will feel unloved or shut out. But there is a massive difference between vulnerability and defensive justification. Vulnerability is sharing your heart with someone who has proven they can hold it. Defensive justification is trying to convince someone that your heart has a right to beat. You can say to a partner, "I am feeling overwhelmed today, and I need an hour alone in my room." without having to provide a PowerPoint presentation on the psychological origins of your stress. A healthy relationship respects the boundary without demanding the thesis defense. If you find yourself constantly having to over-explain your basic needs to the people closest to you, it is not a sign that your explanations aren't good enough. It is a sign that your boundaries are not being respected. The Stoic journey toward peace is a journey of subtraction. It is about stripping away the non-essentials. And one of the heaviest non-essentials we carry is the burden of other people's comprehension of our lives. Drop the burden. Step out of the courtroom. When you stop giving away your power in the form of endless explanations, you will be amazed at how much energy, respect, and profound inner peace you suddenly possess. You will walk through the world not as a defendant on trial, but as the author of your own fate. When you finally stop explaining yourself, a profound and unexpected quiet descends upon your mind. At first, this silence might feel terrifying. We are so fiercely accustomed to the frantic noise of our own justifications that its sudden absence feels like a gaping void. Your ego will twitch. Your heart rate might momentarily spike. The impulse to open your mouth and fill the awkward air with familiar excuses will be overwhelmingly strong. But if you can push through that initial wave of discomfort, if you can simply breathe and let the silence stand, you will step into the ultimate prize of Stoic philosophy, true, unshakable self-sovereignty. You will realize that all the energy you previously burned in the fires of external validation is now yours to keep. You will feel a physical shift. The tightness in your chest will dissolve. The defensive posture of your shoulders will drop. You will no longer walk through the world like a subordinate reporting to a manager. You will walk like the absolute ruler of your own inner citadel. Consider the profound wisdom of Epictetus, who offered perhaps the greatest summary of this entire practice in one simple directive. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. This is the zenith of the Stoic path. The world does not need your explanations. It does not need your verbal blueprints or your defensive arguments. The world only needs to see what a life of quiet virtue actually looks like. If you want to prove to your family that your new career path is the right one, do not argue with them over dinner. Put your head down, do the work, and let your eventual joy and success be the indisputable evidence. If you want to prove that you are setting a boundary out of self-respect and not out of malice, do not write a lengthy, pleading text message. Simply enforce the boundary with calm, unwavering kindness. Words can be debated. Actions are undeniable. When you make the conscious choice to stop over-explaining, you trigger a fascinating psychological phenomenon in the people around you. Initially, they may push back, confused by the sudden disappearance of your usual defensive banter. But very quickly, that confusion will morph into something else: deep, ungrudging respect. Humans are unconsciously wired to respect those who respect themselves. When you decline to justify your existence, you subliminally communicate immense self-worth. You signal that your internal standard for your own life is higher than any external standard they could possibly impose upon you. People will begin to trust your decisions more, simply because you do not seek their permission to make them. They will seek out your presence because your calm, unbothered energy provides an anchor in a society that is drowning in anxious noise. Marcus Aurelius, despite carrying the weight of the Roman Empire on his shoulders, wrote continuously about the necessity of retreating into oneself. He understood that the masses would always have opinions on how he should rule, how he should fight, and how he should live. But he knew that to engage with the endless chorus of critics was to surrender his own mind to the mob. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be, he wrote to himself in the quiet dark of his tent. Be one. Your life is entirely too short, and the gift of your existence is entirely too precious to spend it on the witness stand. You were not put on this earth to be a defendant in the court of public opinion. You are the judge, the jury, and the sole architect of your character. Every time you choose silence over a frantic defense, you are casting a vote for your own freedom. You are reclaiming the heavy bags of gold you use to hand over to strangers. You are picking up your tools and returning to the quiet, sacred work of building your cathedral. Let them misunderstand you. Let them whisper. Let them project their own insecurities onto your choices. Their thoughts are phenomena occurring in their minds, completely separate from your reality. Let the wind of their judgment howl against the stone of your resolve. The wind will eventually exhaust itself, but the mountain will remain. Drop the heavy armor of explanation. Step out into the light of your own quiet conviction. Embrace the absolute freedom of being misunderstood. Let your choices stand naked and unashamed in the world, and discover the deep, abiding peace that comes when you finally decide that your own approval is the only verdict you will ever need. Thank you for joining us on this Stoic journey toward true peace and self-mastery. If this message helped you find your quiet strength and drop the burden of over-explaining, please hit the like button. It tells us this philosophy resonates with you. Share this video with a friend or family member who needs to hear it today. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into ancient wisdom for modern life. Stay strong, stay silent in your conviction, and until next time, keep building your inner citadel.